Nation. Wow, we've blasted out of the campaign. We've had a great campaign. Ben Zion's in there in Radfest. Gennadi's over there at Radfest over there, and it's just been great. And we're moving into a post-election cycle now, and we have, to help inaugurate the post-election cycle, Mr. Charles Holsopple and Mr. Newton Lee in no specific order. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on. We have a special episode. We're talking about Project 222. I love 222. 222 was a really exciting project born out of this sort of Maslowian hierarchy of needs, trying to fulfill the base fundamental needs so that humans can climb up to a better standing in themselves. And if you don't have those those fundamental fundamental needs fulfilled, you're not going to have the basis for a better society. Transhumanism is all about building a better society. So you need to fulfill those needs. And it's kind of interesting because there's developed countries all over the world, and yet there's still problems. There's still issues. In America, there's still issues with sanitation. I mean, that's starting to crack through the surface. There's still problems with fresh, clean water. You've got homeless everywhere. That's in America, and it's an emerging global problem, and one economic shock away from huge amounts of disaster. So we're going to talk about Project 222. Project 222 was really important. It was a staple of Mr. Holsopple's vision, and it's something we're going to carry through and forward on with regardless. And that's what a true champion does. He finds one avenue, and then if it doesn't work out quite the way, well, then you just take it on another avenue and you keep moving. So hello, Mr. Charles Holsopple. How are you?
I'm well. I'm glad to join you and Newton Lee and have an opportunity to bouncing around a little bit without the campaign being the focus.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed the campaign season. It was good to get to know the other transhumanists and really get to know transhumanism from Newton prior, and then I learned a lot during this campaign. And I think 222, I see a lot of people like yourself saying it's a worthwhile project. It's something that requires more contemplation and deserves some action.
And you brought a friend along, someone who was detailed to encourage you to run in the campaign and subsequently meet me, which is a connection that I find very valuable. And who have you brought along?
Professor Newton Lee from the Institute for Education, Research, and Scholarships, a nonprofit that is Project 222's fiscal sponsor. Thank you for joining us, Newton.
Yeah, thank you, and Mr. Newton Lee, Professor. It's very nice to have you here. Just introduce yourself to everybody. It's such a wonderful, it's so wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Steele. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you, Charles, for inviting me to join you this evening. And I'm happy to be here to be supporting Charles because I believe Project 222 is very, very important. And I am the founder of the Institute for Education, Research, and Scholarships. And I started a nonprofit while I was still a full-time employee at Disney. I was making websites for Disney and making computer games and so on. And I was involved in many different nonprofits, such as the Boys and Girls Club, Special Olympics, YMCA, and so on and so forth. So I decided that, towards I was with Disney for 10 years. So towards the last 2 years at Disney, I decided that I really want to start my own nonprofit. And my passion is about education, about research, about scholarships. And that's why I named it the Institute for Education, Research, and Scholarships. And as you know, I started as a very small organization, but I want to do a lot of things. And one way to do it is to involve a lot of different projects, involve a lot of different people who are passionate about helping the world. And Charles is definitely one of the amazing project leaders. And his project is about water, food, and shelter. Right, Charles?
Right, right. Very
Exactly.
measurable amounts. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. As you mentioned earlier that you see a lot of homeless people, even in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in New York City, they're everywhere. Even though America is the richest country in the world, how come we are still having so many homeless people? Things like that. It's just unimaginable.
Yeah. Chronically.
Right.
Yeah,
So when
it's a
we talk
chronic issue.
about and we talk about transhumanism, creating a new world of freedom, of opportunities and equality and prosperity and longevity. You really have to have the basic human rights, basic things that allow people to live a happy life. Right? You may not have $1 million, but you can be happy as long as you have the basic needs fulfilled.
Absolutely, and just before we continue on with this exploration of 222, I just want to ask you. You also assisted in the Transhumanism Handbook, which is a compendium of work. Just before we go down the 222 road, can you just tell everybody what is the Transhumanism Handbook? What's a little bit of work you did there? I mean, you did a lot of work there. And what's it all about, and where can people find it, and all that. And we'll just plug that first, and then we'll roll into 222 for the rest of the show.
Okay, of course. So transhumanism, I want to create a book that is talks about transhumanism in the modern world view. Okay, there have been many books written on transhumanism before, but usually they're very focused on either medicine or philosophy or certain parts of the idea. So, but I want a handbook, meaning that this handbook covers everything, from science to technology to economy to politics to religion. Okay, that's very comprehensive, I must say. So in order to do that, I decided to, of course, I'm a writer too. So I've written some chapters for the book, but I want to talk about a lot of things, not just one thing, but the whole picture, give people the whole picture about transhumanism. To do that, I cannot be the only author. I decided that I need to recruit other authors who are medical doctors, researchers, professors, scientists, and even religious leaders. And in this sense, we're going to be able to look at the whole movement of transhumanism in a more objective way. So you're not, only see it from one angle, but you see it from multiple angles. And then you can make your own decision whether or not transhumanism is for you. Okay. And of course, being a Christian transhumanist, I can tell you, at least in my book, in my handbook, I can tell you that it's a good thing. Transhumanism is a good thing for both Christians and non-Christians, for both atheists and the religious. And of course, it's good for the scientists and engineers, where a lot of people say, okay, scientists, engineers love transhumanism. But what about other people? Okay, so I also incorporate ideas about we have to take care of everybody, not just the elite, not just the educated, not just the certain type of people. So transhumanism is a very inclusive ideology, and that's why my handbook tries to convey to people. It's very inclusive. It doesn't matter who you are, and what matters is that you have to love humanity, and you have to want to transcend our limitations. You have to want to improve society and the world, and that is why I want people to know about transhumanism. And and I know sometimes I may be too idealistic, but I believe if you understand transhumanism and you practice transhumanism, we are going to be able to solve a lot of issues in the world. That includes a lot of things that are out of hand, like homelessness, or having a long-lasting peace in the world is absolutely doable. Really, it's doable. It may seem very difficult. Yes, it is difficult. But if because the religions, the politics, all kinds of things that make, the world really complicated. But if you look at transhumanism and say, look, this may be the solution. It doesn't matter what religions, you believe. Doesn't matter where in the world you're living. Doesn't matter, well, a lot of differences that we have. Of course, we can have differences in the world view, we can have differences in our beliefs and so on, but transhumanism transcends our differences. That's my key point. Once we transcend our differences, then we say, okay, I can make friends with you even though you have a different opinion on things, different from me. But that's okay, because we both believe in humanity, and we both believe that we can transcend our differences, our weaknesses, into and go beyond, and do something great for humankind.
Yeah, that's a very stirring speech, and I understand very much how you can go from that logic to supporting something as fundamental as 222. So 222 is the base of the groundwork, the real groundwork of transhumanism, in the fact that you can sort out a lot of the base problems that are impacting normal everyday people today. I mean, that's part of the issue. A lot of transhumanists spend too much time, and it's not a bad thing. All discussion is good discussion. All discussion is positive in this context. But a little bit too much time focusing on CRISPR, or focusing on future technologies or future events or future theories that are somewhat hypothetical, or space travel, and how does that help the person who doesn't have access to 222? And that's what makes transhumanism unattractive to the person who doesn't have a 222, because they're saying, what are we talking about space travel for? That's actually really selfish when I don't have access to basic food, shelter, and water. And that can be something that turns people away. And then if you turn to contemporary solutions, such as charities or religious foundations or the government, they'll suck you back into a now system that doesn't actually end up talking about how to transcend out of these problems, and this is a problem. You got here, astronaut Neil Armstrong said on the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969, "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Transhuman is the next logical step in the evolution of mankind, and there is an existential solution to a long-term survival of the human race." And that starts with a project like 222. Mr. Holsopple, you're the 222. You've got 222 on your forehead, and you've ensured that everybody knows that. Can you tell us, what is 222? What's the basis of 222, and how is it important?
Well, I think you and Newton both did a lot of that groundwork for me, but I think it's really important that why 222 is you have to have a measurable amount to have an indicator to judge the effectiveness of some action that you take. And using 222, it gives that indicator that I believe should be used within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as common indicators. I think there's 17 goals, and they use 230 some indicators to measure the effectiveness of how that money is spent and how those resources are allocated. And when you look at it, every one of those indicators, whether it be dealing with poverty or homelessness or nutrition, 222 is central to those. So 222 is something that is catchy, and it is something that people can relate to once everybody knows what food, water, shelter is. Everybody knows what about 2 gallons of water, or it can be translated into liters. So it's something that's recognizable, that gives us the opportunity to ask the question, are you better off if your neighbor has dignified access to adequate food, water, and shelter. And when it comes up in the 2 gallons, people can say, well, that sounds reasonable and it sounds feasible that everybody should be able to get 2 gallons of water a day on the planet. And 2,000 calories, it sounds reasonable, feasible that we should be able to feed the people on the planet. The more you learn, the more you know we can. And the shelter is about the size of living out of a car, which or a small tent. And so the numbers came together. It took me 15 years to come up, or 12 years or whatever, to come up with the 222. But I started in the shelter aspect and I came up with the idea of a inflatable shell that could be rigidized, sprayed or coated, and then the inflated walls could be infilled with indigenous material to make a solid micro-mortgageable housing solution. And you could do thousands at a time, right? If you mass produced them and had them stowable and put the infrastructure in. Anyway, I took that idea, I explained it to the professors at the University of Akron, their polymer science school, and asked them, I said, is this feasible to do? Because if it is, if it takes 2 years or 50 years, I was ready to say, I think it can be done. And I know that science and technology, if it was applied to it, it could be done. And it certainly, there's a need for it. So the professors told me that, yes, it's possible, but it may take 25 years to do. So then I'm thinking, okay, we can put up a rapidly deployable, self-erecting, affordable structure that could be engineered to withstand all of the requirements that the environment's going to put on it. And if that's possible, that's what I'll do the rest of my life. But a year or two into it, I realized, dealing with funding, dealing with intellectual properties and patents and travel and lack of funds, basically, I realized that it doesn't matter how many, how fast, how affordable we build, if we don't build an understanding of the individual's role in his environment and society. I'd rather have a silk sheet between friends than a concrete wall between than enemies. And so that the 222 came out of, I said, I need to come up with a question, that people can relate to. It provokes thought, and then but I think I always knew that society had to be a point that they didn't know what else to do in order to take on some new paradigm and really listen to something that could possibly benefit them. And so I think we're at that point. I think that the time for 222 is here. I talk to people all the time, and they're in agreement, the same as we are, we three, and the rest of the transhumanist party, from what or most that I've talked to, realize that 222 is a reasonable, achievable goal, that it should be a human right.
Yeah, and I've just brought up the sustainability goals here. So we've got no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, so aquatic, taking care of aquatic, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals. And so I think they're all laudable goals in their own way, and they all have their own variety of issues and challenges to achieve any single one of those goals. But Project 222 goes to the core of transhumanism in the fact that it wants to take care of the base needs so that you can start to build off and start to achieve any other of those goals. If people don't have dignified access to food, water, and shelter, I mean, how can they go out and improve any one of those other goals? Because you're stuck in that sort of Darwinian logic, that circle of survival. And that's the breeding ground for corruption.
There's a constitutional argument also that I believe is in play. The Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Human Rights, many documents refer to the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. And life is not just something that they threw in there. You know, it's as important as freedom and pursuit of happiness. So life is dependent upon measurable elements, and in order to have life, you have to have, I would argue, 222. So I believe that there's going to be cases where eminent domain over some intellectual properties or patents or resources for the benefit of humankind as opposed to corporate or private control. If we see methods of saving the population that we're designating, that we've said we're going to solve these problems for this global population, we're going to have to take certain measures that we're not expecting to take. I'm not proposing what those may be, but if there's people downstream that are not getting 2 gallons of water, and Nestle's taking 1 million gallons a day upstream, then we have to look at that. And I know that there's laws in place now, but we need not just laws, we need a general uplifting of consciousness that in order to achieve what Newton's saying, a peaceful, prosperous society, we need to come together with common understandings that and as you said, and it tickles me to hear anybody else say 222 with the conviction that Newton and you have, is that yes, it makes sense and it's something that can be done. But there's all these institutions, all the corporations, all of the nonprofits. If we work together and we put our resources together, we can do it as a civilization. So I started 222, the nonprofit, in order to put some structure to that and be an advocacy for it, and not to grow 222 into this mega nonprofit. But that's probably what it should be, is this mega nonprofit that's managed by people more competent than me. You know, I'm not going anywhere, but it has the potential to be involved in hundreds of billions of dollars of relief efforts, and in making those dollars and those methodologies that we use more scientific and more with better public support.
And there's a lot of Christian organizations that, like the Mormons, do terrific work in the nonprofit sector, and it could be integrated with their infrastructure. Mr. Newton Lee, Mr. Holsopple made it very clear that you were supportive of this notion and that you encouraged him to join the USTP to promote this. So you see this as a transhumanist venture? Explain that.
Okay. So let me step back a little bit and say that we all agree that education is very important, right? We all do. Right. We love education. You know, we're highly educated. We love to learn. We love to write. We love to share knowledge. Now, there have been studies showing that a lot of school districts, students are performing poorly because they're hungry. Okay? So again, you have to have the basic 222 even before you can have quality education for the kids, for the children, right? They cannot be, malnourished. They cannot be hungry. They need to have enough food to eat, clean water to drink, and be healthy. Okay, they create the environment so that they don't have to, worried about what to eat. Instead, they worried about, well, not worried, but they pay more attention to studying. Okay. So education, is very important. It's also dependent on 222. Now, so we have education, and hopefully, of course, I'm all for free education as much as what people want, because I've been teaching for 20 plus years. I've seen some children they're not really children. They are 18 plus, so they're teenagers, because I teach universities. And some students there really don't want to be in school. Okay, they hated it. But and some, want to be in school, but they have a lot of financial, needs. They cannot afford even to buy textbooks and so on. So that's one of the reasons why, my nonprofit, promotes education and of course research and then scholarships, so that, they're all related in a sense. So now going back to your question then, the transhumanism, right? So we have to educate the world about transhumanism. So again, it's part of education. Now, the research part is basically science and technology. Science and technology is also the fundamental, the foundation of modern humanity, okay? Because we need science and technology. Now, science and technology bring us good things as well as bad things, right? Because we can have nuclear power, at the same time we have, nuclear bombs. Okay, so there's always good and evil that people can apply technology, to do good or to do evil. So the same thing is transhumanism, right? I mean, you can always use a tool to do bad things, and that's why, we need to focus on, the meaning of life. So that's why one of the chapters that I have, it talks about super longevity. Okay, so transhumanists love to talk about super longevity, but very often they neglect the other part, the other side, which is the meaning of life, because we have to have meaning in order to live a long life. Otherwise, what's the point, right? And so, I mean, I even gave an example of Albert Einstein. He is an amazing scientist. Everybody respect him and so on. And he has done amazing, work in special relativity and general relativity and so on, and photoelectric effect, of course, for which he won the Nobel Prize. But he spent, later years of his life trying to come up with unified field theory, or theory of everything, and he did not succeed. He was working very hard, but it didn't work out for him. So he kind of gave up on that research. And a few years before his death, he was offered to become the president of Israel, and he declined, of course. But imagine, Einstein was a very peaceful man. He actually wanted peace on earth. So if he had taken the job as a president of Israel, I would imagine that today, the Middle East will be quite a different place. So, but anyway, who knows? But what I'm saying is that he did not take a chance to do something that is hard, which is to bring peace, to the Middle East. So anyhow, my point was, he had, he could have lived much longer if he had another purpose in life. Okay, so same thing. I believe that we really need, every one of us may have a different purpose. Maybe your purpose is to, write, amazing novels to educate the world, to express your ideas, or maybe your goal in life is to be a musician. And, so it can be anything that you want, but you have to have some kind of meaning in life. And it applies to teenagers as well as to adults, however old or young you are. And therefore, super longevity. Oh, so that's why the chapters that I wrote is called "In Search of Super Longevity and the Meaning of Life." So I put them together in one chapter. So if you look at the book, Transhumanism Handbook, you'll see that a lot of chapters are quite unique. It's quite different from most science and technology books, and quite different from just a pure transhumanism book. So that's what I like. It's life is an intersection of technology and society. It's an intersection of science and spirituality. So we have to, because a human being is very complicated.
That's the same corner.
Yeah, we are products of many different things. Yeah. So we need to look at all these things and study them, and we understand them. I think that's important.
Absolutely, and you know, if you're talking about reasons to live, super longevity, I mean, that's why transhumanists don't just focus on longevity as a core aspect. I mean, they also focus on super wellness and super happiness. There's this idea that if you're not going to be happy, and happiness is subjective. I mean, nobody's saying
Yes.
that you have to. No one wants a sadomasochist to go into this, but because that makes them happy. But that's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about if your happiness is to go out on a starship and perpetually explore, and maybe that's dangerous. I mean, but if that makes you happy and you want to live a long time to go out and explore new galaxies and whatever, I mean, that's your thing. Go and do that. If your happiness is to sit around on Earth and do research about great findings, scientific findings, or if you're a planet, if you want to go and terraform planets, or I mean, whatever your jig is, I mean, go and research that. Go and do that. I mean, that's the point. I mean, subjective. It's subjective. If you were just a family person, if you want to live for 1,000,000 years, just with your family, I mean, do that. I mean, it's subjective. I mean, nobody wants. So happiness is definitely included in the transhumanist remit of ideas, and for some people, happiness is 2,000 feet of shelter, 2,000 calories, and 2 gallons of water. I mean, that would be really big for some people. Mr. Holsopple, you've got team members all over the world: Nepal, Ghana, Guatemala, Cameroon, Nigeria. Do you want to talk about your extensive international network here, and anything you want to talk about with the global scenario of 222?
Yeah, I'll give you a real quick where it started. LinkedIn in January and March, I put a year ago March, I put the profile up there and said I was looking for the best and brightest minds in order to solve this puzzle of getting 2 gallons of water, 2,000 calories, and 200 cubic feet. And that I wanted to get all the organizations together. I just put it out in a little bit of a white paper, and I started prospecting like I was the old lumber trader that I used to. And I got thousands of contacts back. I mean, hundreds a day. And then one of the contacts I got back, now most of them on LinkedIn, they don't look and see who everybody is, but I figure if I'm saying something pretty profound and some people read it, then a certain percentage of the people that connect will be sincere and want to do something. And that's how I met Newton after a couple of months. And he said, I see where you're going with this. The Institute would be happy to sponsor you. And I told him the big vision. We're looking to affect the global consciousness and through that affect the global economy, to transition to a peaceful, prosperous economy. And we got along very well right away, and that led to the transhumanist part. But what was your original question? Because I wanted to get back to the...
So we were talking about the international scenario of 222, your networks all around the world.
So I looked in the U.S., I looked at professors, but I also looked into different countries that were experiencing the most difficulty in getting dignified access to food, water, shelter. And I looked at the people in different organizations, whether it be the World Health Organization or WASH or Red Cross, and that they had that in their profile. So I started getting connections, and through that I would email and then Skype or WhatsApp with certain people, and they were in different levels of opportunity or dedication that they got to, and they said, I'd like to work with that within my community. And through the dozens in each country, I mean, in Cameroon, there's a couple of dozen people but I talk with one. In Nepal, there's a dozen people there, but I talk primarily with one, because Rabin, who I met through the Institute a few months ago, Rabin Sharma, he's in Nepal. He was going to join us on this call, but his schedule didn't allow. But he was going to come here as an international intern through the Institute. But because of the visa situation right now, that nobody wants to allow people in, he was refused his visa because of he was deemed a flight risk, even though he has a 3-year-old child, a wife, and he has to return to defend his thesis on his master's once the internship would be over. So anyway, the international side of Guatemala, I got involved there, just a minor involvement with Veterans Without Borders, a nonprofit that works with water. And from him, I got an email one day that I wasn't out, not an email, but LinkedIn. I didn't reach him, but he reached out to me. So one of the first people I met through Newton was Paul Civilka in London. And he looked and he decided not to come over and intern here, but he did volunteer to build and maintain the website. So project222.org is all volunteer built. As you can see, it reflects some of that international presence that we've got in Africa and Asia, a little bit in Central America. So that's the international area is almost easier to build than the U.S., at least depending on what level of authority that you can reach, because people they get it, they deal with it daily. They drink out of boreholes or not even boreholes, out of muddy rivers and ponds. So internationally, it's easy to get people to say, yeah, 222, me too.
I love that. That's the first time I heard that one, and that's a catchy slogan. I like that.
Hashtag, yeah.
222 me too. I like it. So yeah, I was just trying to think about where to go with this. So Professor Newton, you're obviously on board with this. Do you see 222 as human right? Do you think it's a human right? And I'll caveat this actually, because when I first heard of the 222 project, when Mr. Holsopple came on as a candidate, I was really excited because there's a lot of issues in the world, and from everybody across the spectrum, if you're a socialist, internationalist, or if you're a patriot, I mean, you all want what this is offering, because if you're a patriot who wants people to stop fleeing their own countries and coming up to other people's countries and stuff, Project 222 will enable people to stay where they are. They won't have to run away from their country because they don't have access to dignified food, water, and shelter. And it'll stem that process. If you're an internationalist, you want that by default. You want mechanisms that cross transnational mechanisms that assist people, and so they don't have to rely on capitalist countries to suck them in for cheap labor. So is 222 a human right, Professor Lee?
Well, it certainly is human rights, right? We have the right to, like Charles says, right? Every person in the world has the right to live. And not to live, we have to have the basic needs fulfilled. Okay? Because without that, there's science is not going to help you, technology is going to help you, not going to help you. Transhumanism doesn't mean anything to you, right? Until you have this basic rights, until you get basic education, right? So I believe because of that is certainly a human rights issue. And so it's interesting. Earlier you mentioned about going to the moon, which is a good example. I also give in my book, and I'm glad that you read. I think you read the cover, the back cover of the book, and when I talk about
I can read the whole thing if you want.
That's right. Okay, so I was saying that look, it's interesting that we spend a lot of time and energy, and of course, resources, expend money, etc., in order to send, human beings to the moon, right? Now, what do we get from that? Well, we don't, get diamonds or gold or anything from the moon. So, in a sense, it's just a matter of exercising our creativity, our advancing our technology, right? You think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, it was not a small feast. It was really, really tough. In fact, they were not even confident that they would be able to do it successfully. Okay, a successful landing was very hard, but they did it, right? And then over time, they perfected technology, right? At that time, computers were very, very bulky, very slow, inefficient. Now, the cell phones in our pockets is more powerful than the computers on the Apollo 11. Can you imagine that? You have more power in your pocket today than the whole computer system on Apollo 11 that landed on the moon. Okay, so we have such powerful technology today. What do you do with it? Well, unfortunately, we don't do too much. Okay, sure, we can go to Mars. All right, that's okay. Let them do that. I'm not too excited about going to Mars. I'm more excited about how we protect the environment on Earth than creating a new settlement on Mars. So anyhow, I believe a lot of good technological solutions, like Charles mentioned, his the affordable housing, right? The technology that can actually build houses very cheaply, very quick, very fast, right? The question becomes, where do you put those houses? Where do you get the land from? So there's a lot of logistics that we have to think about. But technology can actually do a lot of things if you think about it. Now, self-driving cars, right? Self-driving cars can transport people from one place to another to work. They don't have to buy their own cars. They don't have to, say, well, people who are out of a job, they can't say that, oh, it's too far away. The job is too far away. They cannot afford to buy a reliable car. But with self-driving public transportation, now you can, transport people, right, everywhere to the jobs. So there's so many things that technology is here today to help us. The question is, are we willing to apply the technologies to helping people? Or are we just, wasting our talent and technology on something? For example, there are software out there. The goal is to make money, and that's it. To make money for the rich, right? But what's the point? We should apply those amazing software and research into helping people, into saving environment, rather than getting the rich people richer. Is my point? So it's just incredible. There's so much we can do, and I hope that the Transhumanism Handbook really energize people, really make people think about what are we doing. There's so much amazing talent, so much amazing technology that we can do a lot of good things in the world.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you talk about the financialization of everything, and the fact that people just do swaps all day, and so how much technology is focused on increasing the amount of swaps you can do in the financial markets just to make money, when instead you could be using that computer power for research, or computing different calculations or something. And it's just amazing how there's so many system problems. I'll read it out for you. I'll read out the whole little blog on the back. So modern humanity so this is from the Transhumanist Handbook, which everybody should buy ASAP. You should. I'll put the link in the bottom and go and buy it right now. I mean, go and get it. Modern humanity, with some 5,000 years of recorded history, has been experiencing growing pains with no end in sight. It is high time for humanity to grow up and transcend itself by embracing transhumanism. Transhumanism offers the most inclusive ideology for all ethnicities and races, the religious and the atheists, conservatives and liberals, the young and the old, regardless of socioeconomic status, gender identity, or any other individual qualities. This book expounds on contemporary views and practical advice from more than 70 transhumanists. Astronaut Neil Armstrong said on the Apollo 11 landing in 1969, "One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Transhumanism is the next logical step in the evolution of humankind, and it's the final solution to the long-term survival of the human race. So that's a very uplifting, idea. I mean, we're shackled. It comes down to this idea that we are shackled by this Darwinian brain, which is built on the notion of scarcity and death anxiety, and that formulates a whole array of problems that pervades itself through human systems, and it characterizes itself in a whole bunch of political systems that, they try. I mean, communism tried, fascism gave it a shot. Liberalism has done fairly well in connecting the world and creating a more peaceful place. But you have byproducts like the fact that it's just growth without end, and you do end up with environmental degradation because there is no real planning. I mean, a lot of people are against planning, but this is what you get when you don't plan. And the thing is, when it all unravels, it could unravel. The world was super interconnected prior to World War One. I mean, the world was a very connected place, comparable to what we're in now without the internet. And people forget that all just unraveled at a single moment. So no, this is good, and we have a shot. We have a time right now. The USTP now has Ben Zion in there. We have Humanity Plus. We have the internet. We have People Unlimited. We have 222. We have scientists all around the world who are collaborating, thanks to the great research at SENS and all these laboratory. I mean, we have this shot. And Elon Musk, like I was saying last night, Elon Musk is pushing hard because we have this window where we're not stuck in a feudal age, we're not stuck in the dark age, there's not some imperial system that is anti, it's Orwellian enough. We do have enough freedom and enough chance right now, and with social media, even though it's it's hard. I mean, we have enough to try, and if we can break even our brain out, you were talking before about Einstein, if we can even break one Einstein out, that thinking capacity might be just enough to start wrestling back some of these problems and formulating some solutions. And we have to utilize what we have right now. Mr. Holsopple, it's interesting, in the notes you sent me of the Project 222, you have in your pyramid, in your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, underneath Wi-Fi and battery life. Now, I'm assuming battery life because in these poor countries, a generator is all good, but fuel, getting fuel to these communities is a difficult challenge, at best. Why have you got battery life there? And is there a digital hierarchy of needs?
The graph that I used, you'll notice that it's credited. I don't remember exactly who is on there, but it's got a little double T. And so I looked at that, and it was part of the presentation I gave of 222 at the book signing for the Transhumanism handbook. So when I saw that, I was going through the library doing some research, trying to find the right graph for the first slide on the presentation. And when I saw Wi-Fi and battery life, I figured that's a good way for people to look at it, put a little smile on their face, because they realize whether they're, they don't have to know much about the whole energy system, but that if you have something in your pocket and the battery's dead, your day's ruined, right? So it was just something that was quick. It would have a little bit of humor, and it's also got a lot of truth behind it. And that's the essence. Is what I try to do is put something, be a little clever, be a little humorous, but always have truth behind what I'm trying to get across.
Well, it sounds humorous, but there is this notion of a digital hierarchy of needs, which I find very important. I'm putting that up on the screen right now. Sorry, Newton, we're all going to disappear for a second. But this is quite interesting. Digital needs, pyramid 2 of Maslow's. So you've got self-actualization up the top there with YouTube, like YouTube University, LinkedIn, you know, interconnecting with professionals. Pinterest, I've never really used it. I'm not sure what it does, but it's obviously important. Esteem needs, so, you know, I don't know, Instagram, Twitter, you know, well, Twitter is very important to Donald Trump, so there you go. And Snapchat. Belonging and love needs, you know, so all of these new social media. So we're using Skype now. I mean, without Skype, you know, we wouldn't have this conversation. Facebook
I love this thing.
Interconnect with everybody. I'm assuming the phone is some sort of connection and Tinder, dating. I mean, dating is all online now, regardless of whether or not you're in what country you're in. Safety, you know, cyber safety, you know, everybody uses email, Google and maps. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Navigation we've outsourced that whole component to our brain. Nobody uses a compass and chart and map anymore. I mean, nobody does. It's only getting better. And then on the bottom, the physical needs. So there you go. There's your battery, there's your Wi-Fi, your laptop, your mobile, and your signal. I guess that's your normal signal to satellites and other things. So, you know, I saw that and I remembered that and I thought, well, that's not that silly. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think it's right on. That's what I say. It had truth in it, but it also had, it makes people realize how dependent we are really on technology today. Mm-hmm. I mean, we need our food, water, shelter, but before I go, let me get my phone. You know, and if it's not charged, I'll wait to eat because I don't want to be out without my phone. You know, right. So it's very real and practical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great that you put up the chart. It's very interesting. So, you know, I'm a computer scientist and I love technology, but there are also many disadvantages of technology, other than what I mentioned before. For example, Facebook is supposed to, you know, connect people together, right? In fact, I find my old friends on Facebook and so on, so it's wonderful. But there have been studies that have shown that, you know, even though technology allows us to connect with one another, okay, people actually have fewer friends in real life, and people are getting lonelier than before. So we are more lonely, less friends, and yet we use technology like Facebook to connect with more and more and more people in the world. Okay, so it's a big irony, trust me. You know, it used to be that, you know, you ask your friends, you know, go out and play balls or whatever, and go to the cinema and so on. Now you just, you know, type on a small screen, you know, text each other, you know. So, I mean, which is better? Seeing your friends in real life, you know, in person, or, you know, just socialize with them electronically or digitally. So, you know, it's an irony. It's something to think about. So actually, I wrote one book on Facebook. It's called Facebook Nation. So that has been a pretty popular book. It's been used in, you know, on campuses and other places. So I've written a book on Facebook. I wrote a book on Google. So it's called Google It. And of course, I wrote a book about Disney because I worked there for 10 years. So yeah, check out those books. It's very interesting. Disney, Facebook Nation, Google It, and of course, Transhumanism Handbook.
I didn't realize you wrote Facebook Nation. I've talked to a lot of people about, a lot of people have mentioned that book in passing. That's really cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that was you. Wow, cool. All right, well, that's awesome. Big news. All right, cool. So, Mr. Holsopple, you wanted me to ask one other thing. Let me just find that. I just lost that.
I probably forgot the answer. Don't ask that one.
Oh, what is the strategy moving forward? Did you forget the answer? No, I don't think you did.
No, but the answer, it changes a little bit every day because there's a few new developments, hopefully. But I'd mentioned Rabin coming from Nepal. Now,
yeah, the visa.
He's not going to be able to make it, at least until we get legislative help or something in that regard. But he's committed to work remotely there. So we're looking at putting together our requests for proposals, our memorandums of understanding, the grant applications. So all of the necessary paperwork that we're going to need to present to the Gates Foundation or the Red Cross or the UN or to the local organizations working in those countries, the Harvest Plus that works on nutrition, and Water Aid, or any Veterans Without Orders, any of the hundreds of thousands of nonprofits that are going to see 222 as part of their goals and mission, that if their population had dignified access to food, water, shelter, their mission is going to be a lot easier. So we want to get those collaborations together and be able to very clearly articulate it in the proper formats that these organizations and the foundations and the government agencies require. So that's what we're working on. So that's a 3 to 4 or 5 month project with Rabin working remote with me, and then drawing in others. Now that could accelerate if we get major foundations watching the detonation and sees and says, hey, that's worthy of, I donate $100 million a year, let me look at this very closely and see if I want to put any money in it. And if they do, they're going to see that, yes, they do want to put money in it because it helps the mission, whatever foundation it is, because it brings together a peaceful coexistence with healthy individuals. So it's not and it's not me telling them or 222 telling them how to do it. It's empowering those people that say, we want to help this village in Ghana or in Nepal or in Cameroon, or these people in the streets in LA or Tampa or Sydney. And these are the organizations that are working on those issues currently. We've already identified, we have the data on where these people are, what they need, why many of them are there. And these are the best practices that we've identified. And we want to work with other agencies, and we establish those minimums. So it's getting it into the Sustainable Development Goals, getting our internal documents prepared, and continuing to raise awareness and bring the group together. There's a LinkedIn group. I didn't know, it was a little out of focus, but was LinkedIn on your hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, and LinkedIn was at the very top, actually, of the hierarchy of needs, right next to something else.
Okay, well, that's what got Newton and I together, which is ultimately what got you and I together, which is what got me involved in the Transhumanist Party, and the Transhumanist Party involved in 222.
I have a feeling that. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I'm just enjoying it's taken me 15 years to get to this point, so each day now seems like it's going actually fairly quick, even if I don't do much. I haven't done a lot today, but I was anticipating this broadcast and the ability to talk to yourself and Newton and have some sort of document that could then be shared. And the more information that gets out, the more people that are out there talking. That international mix that we mentioned earlier in the show, there's, I think, over 35 countries that I've talked to, people that are there, that whether they be psychologists or professors or human rights aids workers, that they get it and they want the thing to grow. So there's a LinkedIn group page, project222 nospace.org. You just in the LinkedIn search bar, and that'll take it to the group. I think there's 165 members. The idea is to grow that to hundreds of, many more, hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of members ultimately, because it's not something that is benefiting one person. It's what benefits one benefits all, and it's taken a hold of my life, as you know. But I haven't talked to very, very few people that don't get it and say, yeah, it sounds reasonable, sounds feasible, and what can I do? That's the thing, is once we start raising funds, a lot of people, that's all they'll be able to do, and that's certainly welcome. But I haven't really gone out on a fundraising effort yet, because it's what am I going to do with it? I don't have an employee. I could hire a campaign, not a campaign manager, but a marketing expert to build it up. And that's one thing that we want to do. You'd notice that logo. I don't know if you have a photo of that there. I think it was in the slide presentation with the 3 teardrops. That was made by a volunteer University of Florida grad in Vietnam that was traveling, and I don't know what his name is or her name, only from a friend gave it to me and said that the person donated it to 222. So the 222 brand it's recognizable, it's memorable, and we'll have a product line to help fund the nonprofit. Did you get a 222 t-shirt or a 222 pair of shoes? So the idea is to come up with a product line, and when you see it, you've donated, you've purchased a product. I would love to have the product be environmentally sound, and the dye process and the fair wages paid along the way. So when you buy a particular 222 hat or the 222 shirt, it would benefit the program, that you would be able to very, very clearly look at and see, where is this money going? I'm going to donate it to the Ghana Project. What are the goals of the Ghana Project? Who's involved? What are the metrics for monitoring the success of it? What's the sustainability? What's the 3-year plan for it? So again, we're back to all the documents, but the idea is to do it very thoroughly, very completely, and very transparently, and come up with product line, come up with the marketing, and we'll end up being a very large organization. I have no doubt, or a large movement. I'm not sure of the organization, but I'm more interested in the movement than I am the organization, which since I'm the head of the organization, I'm not sure that's good, but maybe I'll get some help.
And I want to do everything I can here at Dead Nation to ensure that I get the message out that Project 222 exists, and that it's something worthwhile, and that it's something that should be embraced. And you've made the campaign. Regardless of what happened, I mean, you've made some great contacts, and there's some great people out there, and it makes you understand how good people are, and how smart people are, and how connected people are. And you can talk to people like Kimberly Forsyth, who dropped out because she's so interconnected with the Estonian government, for example. And I mean, she might be able to help you, leverage your way into some of that tier. Newton Lee, who knows a lot of people in education and in the academic world who know people, and I know the academic world pretty well, and I know they know people. I've got Bill and Melinda Gates, Save the Children, and a whole bunch of them around the corner here from the studio. We can go and connect with them. And the thing about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is they have a few core metrics of funding, and education is one of them in America, and then globally it's global health. So if you could sell Project 222 as a global health initiative, using the water aspect as a global health initiative, I mean, there's a selling point there, right? So and there's plenty of other ones. I like your idea about the sponsorship that goes down the World Vision Avenue. When you sponsor a child, you get an update, not a creepy update, but this is Tangier. Tangier was this, now he's better, and now here's him with his chicken. It's a better strategy, as opposed to, well, your money's gone into a sinkhole, and people then worry if it's if it's a scam or a fraud or just an organization to funnel, to wash money, and you don't want any of that. You don't want any of that.
I have an idea on how to deal with that. Once we have the projects, that if you're going to donate money, you have a student with a cell phone that you can that shows the activities that are going on, and it's not just you train that. So we've set up community centers in different areas, and then we have a video that you can tune in and say, what is the water situation in in rural Ghana, and you get a real live person that's made a video that shows the kids going to school, fetching water, explaining how much of their day is involved in getting water and doing chores that they don't get to go to school. And then if you make a contribution, you can actually continue to see where your money goes.
So
it's like the mini documentaries.
Right.
It's
and you have one for every. So you go to our website. The idea is you would be able to say, I want to spin the dial and I'll end up in Nepal today, or I'll end up in the streets of LA. And then you see these are the nonprofits working in that area. This is the number of government dollars that's going into that project. This is the short-term goal and the long-term goal. And then you link to those different other agencies, but you also see the Project 222 budget and what's going on.
So two things that come to mind on that would be, one, working with Google and Google Maps. I think integrating into that system would be fundamental. It would be quick and easy for consumers, for donators, and another one would be integrating quickly with. So, for example, you're talking about water. Well, the water ministry of country X. So you come along, you say, here's Google. Those guys are going to map out your water. We're going to put it, and the water ministry gets on board, and then you plug your data from there. People go to Project 222 website. There's the map done. I mean, that's just an idea.
Yeah, and on top of that, you have the different requirements for a 222 project. You have to have those government agencies that are affecting the water situation, and you have to have a certain number of nonprofits. So when you go in to get that geographic data, you can see all of those categories of who's involved in 222, and you can research them on their credibility and the whole thing, but. Yeah, it's it's all about data, really. The more data you have, the more informed you are. The more informed you are, the better you realize that it makes sense if we have a healthy plan.
We live in a data-rich world where people, it's data is the new oil, and if you can move data in a certain direction, you can get almost any outcome you want. Data is the race now. To utilizing data correctly. So that's fantastic, and it's really awesome to hear. Coming up on the end of the show, but Mr. Holsopple, I'll just start with you. Is there anything else you wanted to say about 222 or the campaign, for example? You did a terrific campaign. You ran a really long, solid campaign. You brought a very mature voice to the USTP primary. They're all there in Radfest right now. What do you say about the campaign in the U.S. Transhumanist-Party? Are you going to quit like hey, what I did? I mean, I don't mean to ruin the vibe, but this is a serious topic.
No, John Ben Zion and I talked 2 nights ago about bringing. Continuing to work with him in helping bring 222 into the platform. He was very supportive of that. And in fact, we talked about talking to you and see if we could twist your arm and do a show coming up and maybe have another guest on or two. So, I see moving. It was so, when Newton suggested, hey, 222, the Institute for Education, Research, and Scholarships, they deal with the same thing. They're looking to better humanity. And we did that for a year. And then he said, hey, transhumanism, IFRS 222, it's all the fundamental goals are all the same. It works together. And it would be, so I decided to run. When I met the different candidates, not all, some are, kind of, it's mine, I had it first, it's mine, and you don't get any type of attitude within the candidates. But for the most part, it was good, caring people that wanted to use science and technology to better the conditions of the species on the planet. And that's what 222 is in a very nutshell. I don't talk that language to everyone. I'm not an educated scientist, but I think like one sometime, right? So when I find educated scientists, passionate people that know politics, that know all the isms and the ists and all of those things, and we agree about what's important, then it just strengthens me to move forward. So finding the Transhumanist Party was finding a gold nugget for me, and it's not just a nugget, because there's a vein that goes, it runs for a while, and there's deposits all over the world, to take that metaphor a little further, So I'm very encouraged by the campaign. I'm very encouraged by Ben Zion's willingness. Also, John Kurtz said, we wanted to continue on with 222 as far as, what he could do. So once we have structure, once we have structure, and there's something so I can't tell you how many people say, yeah, what can I do? And again, I don't have we can take money at this point, but that's really not our major need. Will be soon, and that's something that we'll have to work on. But it's getting the information out, getting the message out, and getting it not just getting the message out, but getting it critiqued and analyzed to see with the people that are in the position to put the sustainable development goals, with the people that write those indicators. They're going to see it as useful as you do, and Newton does, and everybody else, because it just makes sense. And we just have to maintain a transparency and a credibility, and I think we'll start growing over this next year. We'll grow very, very fast once we start hitting and we're ready to go.
Mr. Professor Lee, what do you say? What do you have in final thoughts about Project 222, or the campaign, or the Transhumanist Party, or what you've seen, or the future trajectory of the world? Anything you want to talk about? I mean, hit us up with your wisdom.
Well, it's a lot to talk about, but let's focus on Project 222 today. Like I said before, it's very important because we have the basic human rights, the basic needs of survival, and as a result, you can have education. And because of education, then we can have good research. Okay, so you cannot have one without the other. So Project 222, education, research, in that order. All right, and I really strongly believe in education, not only because I'm an educator myself, I've been teaching for 20+ years, but I strongly believe that there are many Einsteins, many Beethovens, and many amazing talents out there in the world. But guess what? They're hungry today. They're starving. Where do they get education? They can't even get food. Right? So, but if you provide them with the basic needs, at least, then they're free up their mind to learn, to educate themselves. Okay? The internet gives them all the knowledge they can read Wikipedia all day long. They can learn so much from the internet. All right? They can make software development. They can create software programs. You can have there may be a genius somewhere in the world that is amazing software developer. Okay, so things like that, and as we give everybody the same opportunity, okay, then you will see humanity will be much better off, because a lot of times research are being done by a close group of people, a small group or small groups of people, in different areas. But if you allow everyone to do research, can you imagine what happens? Okay, not only can we go to the moon, we can go to Mars, we can go to any planet we want. Okay, we can cure cancer, we can cure any diseases we want. We cannot just depend on certain groups of researchers. We cannot depend, put all the eggs in one basket, so to speak. So we don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. But we do want to put all the eggs in humanity. We have to believe in the potential of humanity. And that means we have to help everyone, not a few people, but everybody, as many people as possible.
Yeah,
two eggs for every two eggs for every basket, I say. Like a chicken for every pot, or whatever the old expression was. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. That's really good, and I totally agree. And someone you should connect with, Newton, who's very interested. Yeah, he's an interesting candidate. He was racing up there for a while, but his main focus is education, and that's Kristen T. Harris. He's a bit of a wild one, but he's very, very interesting, and he's huge on education. He bangs on about it all the time. He thinks education is one of these foundational elements, especially focusing on the fact that technology is currently changing so rapidly, and that's only going to sort of accelerate. My thing is these ethical concerns around these changing technologies. I'm finding myself more and more talking about building discovering what sort of parameters we need and for these new changing emergency technologies and things. And I think these cool technologies can be integrated with Project 222, and you could see an acceleration of a project like this that in hundreds of years ago would never have happened. 50 years ago would have taken billions of dollars, and now is done by Mr. Holsopple somewhere in Florida, on a shoestring budget. So, I think that this is a demonstration of the changing capabilities and the improving technological power of the internet, including this show here, including
absolutely,
all of it, talking and manufacturing books like you've done, Mr. Newton, to get these ideas out there. It's all fantastic. So it's all a positive vibe. And I think we just have to take advantage of this spot in time. We have to take advantage of it now. We can't let it slip by and slip into some neo-feudal era where these sorts of freedoms are eroded, and that we can't access this great opportunity anymore. So that's fantastic. All right, well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on this episode of Detonation. This is the post campaign. Mr. Holsopple will be in touch, organizing some more stuff, and fantastic. So thank you very much. And Newton, it's been such an honor. I've been wanting to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on the new channel. So it's so great to finally have you on. To grace us and give us the thing I love about PhDs and doctors is they learn to simplify everything back down to normal language. They go through a loop. I find academics they go from being simple expression to overly flowery language to excessively flowery language, and no one can understand them, and then back to simple statements because they realize simple statements is what it's all about. And you're at the I can tell you're a smart guy because you're back to simple statements rather than
I love philosophy, but I know what you mean. I love philosophy, but sometimes philosophers get things really complicated and nobody understands them, and that's no good. Philosophers are supposed to educate the public.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I really like the Bible, the Holy Bible. The Bible actually, talks about a lot of spiritual things, difficult matters, in a very simplistic, way, right? Fables, stories, all kinds of things that the Bible talks about. It really, it teaches us a lot of things, and that's something that even children can study, can understand. Can you imagine that?
Well, yeah, I've always found the Bible overly complicated. Like, I understand the individual sections, but I never really. But that's probably because I didn't have the correct base to learn the Bible off, so I'm not sure. But yeah, but I understand.
That's a discussion. I would love to have a discussion with you about the Holy Scripture.
You're not a Mormon, are you? Are you a Mormon?
No, I'm a Christian.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, I'm kind of like a fundamentalist Christian, and yet I have a more liberal view. So I'm both conservative and liberal, and I respect all religions, not just. Christianity.
Because I noticed you published Blair Ulster in the Transhumanist
Yes,
Handbook.
yes.
We've had Blair Ulster on before, and all the Mormon transhumanists I'm going to have on soon. So if you want to be on any of those panels or debates with the Mormons, I mean, Blair Ulster included in that, give me a buzz and I'll bring you on for a Christian transhumanist discussion, because
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yes.
that's another fascinating whole dimension to the transhumanist. But this one's about 222. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll see you back again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you, Steele. Newt.
All more coming to you all this way, all this week.